Okay, my friends, a couple of you have private messaged me about your internet connection. And before we go any further, I want to make absolutely sure we are on board and everything is okay. Give me a quick thumbs up if everything is good now with your internet. I'm seeing some digital thumbs up. I'm seeing actual thumbs up. Perfect. Excellent, excellent. And again, my friends in Scape, I will head on over as soon as I can leave the classroom to make sure you guys are all right over there, okay? All right, so again, before we start diving into our lesson on rounding, I do want to circle back about and talk a little bit about our place value vocabulary and why that's going to be important, because we need to have a really good understanding of place value so that we can round. And in a few minutes, that's going to make sense to you. So, how many of you remember this pictorial? And I'm just going to hold it up so I don't have to share my screen. So remember, we did talk about place value and place value and digits. We talked about lots of different things. We talked about how a place and place value and how those things are different. We talked about what a digit is. Sophia, it's going to have to wait a minute, okay? Thank you. I see your hand, but it's going to have to wait a minute. Thanks. So we talked about digits and what digits are. Digits are those symbols, right, that make whole numbers. We talked about the actual value of a number and how that's determined. And the value is determined by the place it holds in the number. It's going to be important that you understand that going forward, because when we talk about rounding numbers, we have to look at the places and place values within the numbers in order for us to round. So I want you to take a look at page 5 in the textbook. You should have it in front of you. And up at the top, the very top of page 5, it says, you know that 3-digit numbers are formed by groups of hundreds, tens, and ones. Use what you know to try to solve the problem below. And so you all should be looking at a place value mat right now that has hundreds, tens, and ones. And the number is 384. And it says, look at the number 384 in the place value chart. Between which two tens does it fall? And between which two hundreds does it fall? I want you to take just a second and think about what that question is asking you. And then I'm going to share my screen and we're going to talk about a few things. Take just a second and try to determine what this question is asking you. Okay, I'm going to turn my lights on. I'll be back in just a second. Alrighty, my friends, I am going to share my screen. Sophia, do you have a question about rounding? I can't hear you. You need to unmute.
It's about tech problems.
What is the tech problem?
You guys keep freezing, like, you just froze for a minute. Everyone just froze.
Okay, that will happen. So what I need you to let me know is if, for example, if your computer ever freezes and it doesn't come back at all, like if I just freeze and you can't get back into the meeting, let me know if that's happening. And then if that does happen, what you need to do is leave the meeting and then come back and reestablish the connection. Okay? All right. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share my screen. Okay. And so this is where we're at right now. And again, I can only see a few of you in my screens. For those of you who do not have your videos on, please turn your videos on. Thank you. All right. So it says up here at the top, you know that 3-digit numbers are formed by groups of hundreds, tens, and ones. Use what you know to try to solve the problem below. Look at the number 384 in the place value chart. Between which two tens does it fall? Between which two hundreds does it fall? There is a way that we can determine where it falls. But in order to do that, you have to know which place value needs to be used. Now, if we take a look at 384, we're being asked two questions, guys. We're being asked between which two tens and which two hundreds. Now, we're going to go ahead and take the tens first, because that's the first question we were asked. We were asked about tens. In order for us to do that, we need to take a look at the place value to the right. So in this case, if I'm determining the tens, right, I'm going to look next door. I'm going to look here. And if I find that the neighbor next door has a value of 5 or greater, I'm going to be rounding up. If my neighbor next door has a value of 4 or less, I'm going to be rounding down. Again, 5 or more in the place next door, I'm going to be rounding up. 4 or less, it goes down. This is not going to change. So if we were only to look at right now, let's say we are not looking at the hundreds. We are only looking at the tens. And I were to give you this number to say, please round this number to the nearest 10. What would you tell me? What would you tell me? Adon, go ahead.
I'll tell you that the nearest 10 to 84 is going to be 80.
Right. You're right. You're absolutely right. Thank you. The other way to think about this is to think about it on a number line. If you were looking at 84 and you drew 80 through 90 on a number line and you were counting all the little lines, right? You would take a look at your number line and ask yourself, where does 84 fall? Is it closer to 80 or is it closer to 90? Okay, so if we had a number line like this, I'm sorry, my screen is kind of delaying. So let's say we had a number line like this and we had 80 over here and we had 90 over here. Okay? And we know that 85 is in the middle. So that we would know that 84 would fall right about here, right? So you can see on the number line that 84 is going to be closer to here than here. So visually, that's another way to think about it. Can everybody see on the number line what I did? Okay, I want you to take another look back at the place value. Now take a look at the hundreds place, and I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. So this time, we're looking at the hundreds place. Now, same rules apply, my friends. The same rules apply. So if I were going to ask you to round this number to the nearest 100, you would go to the neighbor, go to the neighbor, knock on the door, see what they've got, right? You're going this way. You go a place to the right. And now we're looking at those tens. So does the hundreds place neighbor, is it 5 or more or 4 or less? Remember the rules, same rules always apply. If it is 5 or more, you round up. If it is 4 or less, you round down. 5 or more rounds up, 4 or less rounds down. So if I were to ask you, please round 384 to the nearest 100, what would you tell me? After determining the place, going next door, seeing what they've got, how are you rounding this number? The nearest 100 would be what? Would be 400. 5 or more means you add 1 more. To the nearest 100, you're rounding to 400. Okay? So, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for just a minute so I can see all of your faces, because it's hard for me to see when I'm sharing my screen. All right, so how many of you saw that? How many of you are seeing this? I'm asking because I see how your book is written, right? And we can use all sorts of number lines like this, right? We could visualize it in our brains. We could get a lot of blocks out. We could do that. That helps students too. But I've also made a chart about rounding, because my students know I like my charts, right? That hopefully will explain it to you a little bit better. And here is my chart. This is my chart on rounding, and in a minute I am going to project it for you. It's all about rounding, and it steps it through, and you're going to be able to see up at the top, find the place, look next door, 5 or bigger, add 1 more. It's a rhyme. Please put that in your brains. 4 or less, let it rest. Okay? You find the place, you go next door. 5 or more, if it's 5 or bigger, you add 1 more. 4 or less, let it rest. And I've given you lots and lots of examples here of what I mean by that. Okay? I'm going to project it. Isis, it's going to have to wait just a second, okay? Now, all right, This is my chart. And I've given you lots and lots of examples. And I want everybody's eyes on the screen. Super important. Everyone's eyes on the screen, please. Again, you are finding the place. Look next door. 5 or bigger, add 1 more. 4 or less, let it rest. I've given you some examples of the nearest 10. You will see 23 is my first example. Notice my strategy, friends. Notice my strategy. I am always circling the place I am trying to round. This is where understanding place and place value is so important. Because unless you know the place value, you will not be able to round. If I'm asking you to round to the nearest 10, you have to know where that is, right? You've got to know where the 10th is before you can round to it. Nearest 10, I'm taking 23, I'm going next door. That is 4 or less. I'm letting it rest. It rounds to 20. I'm rounding 28. I go next door. It is 5 or bigger. I add 1 more. I round to 30. Look at here, kind of tricky. I'm looking at 5, just the number 5, but I need to round to the nearest 10. Just because it's 0 doesn't make it unvaluable. I'm going next door. It's 5 or bigger. I'm adding 1 more. 5 rounds to 10. Take a look at the number 2. I'm rounding to the nearest 10. Again, just because it's 0 doesn't make it any less invaluable. I'm going next door. It's 4 or less. I'm letting it rest. I have no 10s. Take a look at 136. I'm rounding to the nearest 10. I go next door. It's 5 or bigger. I add 1 more. I round to 140. Thumbs up if we're seeing this, if we're seeing the pattern. Excellent. Now we're going to talk about hundreds. I'm going to move this up a little bit. Here we go. Nearest hundreds. Take a look here. 134. Notice that I have squared out the 100. It helps my brain. I'm going next door. It's 4 or less. I'm letting it rest. I round down to 100. 187. I go next door. That number is 5 or bigger. I add 1 more. I round up to 200. How many of you are seeing the pattern? How many of you are seeing the pattern? Excellent. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for just a second. This is a really good resource for you going forward. Is it on my website? Of course it is. It's under my Math Pictorials tab. It's there along with lots of place value charts as well for review. So another reason why vocabulary is so important, where we're talking about place value and value and digits. Unless you understand that vocabulary, you will not be able to do this math. You have to be able to determine the place. In order to do that, you need to know what that is. That's what this chart's about too. This will help you, okay? So, is this going to always be on my website? Yes, it is. Because it's a good resource for you. You'll be using it all through 3rd grade. All right? Now, please take a look at page 6 in your book. Page 6 in your book. This is what it's looking like right now. Page 6 in your book. And you're going to see that it has some number lines, something we just did. You're gonna see it has some number lines. And it's going to just do that quick check in your brain. It's gonna ask you to take a look at some numbers that are in bold. So if you kind of look down at number 2, where it says look ahead, and it says to look at the 8, the 14, and the 5 on this number line. And it's asking you to round to the nearest 10. This is what I like about our math books. Remember when we were talking about text features? Text features? Math books are loaded with them. I'm loving the different colors. I'm loving the bold. I'm loving the headings. These are all text features to help your brain and help your eyes. So we're taking a look at this on the number line. So for example, if I were to right now and pick the number 5 on page 6, and I asked you to round that number, Cece, it's gonna have to wait a minute, okay? Thanks. If I ask you to take that number and round 5 to the nearest 10, how many of you could do it right now? How many of you could round 5 to the nearest 10? 5 to the nearest 10. Remember here, my friends, 5 to the nearest 10. Just because there currently is no 10 doesn't make the place invaluable. Right now we have 0 tens. We're rounding to the nearest 10. So what is that new value going to be if you round 5 to the nearest 10? Who thinks they know? Who thinks they know? I'm seeing a couple of hands up. I'm seeing Odin with a confident hand. Go ahead.
The nearest 10 is 10.
The nearest 10 is 10, and beautiful, complete sentence. Thank you. How many of you can round, in our brains, 14 to the nearest 10? 14 to the nearest 10. So if I write that down, and I'm gonna make it bigger because I also have my purple Expo marker. Y'all know I love purple. I want an excuse to use my purple Expo marker. So if I take this number and I ask you to round it to the nearest 10, what is the first thing we should do according to the chart? What is the first thing we should do? The first thing we should do. I do not want the solution, I want the first step. Sophia, go ahead. What's the first thing I should do here?
The first thing you need to do is if it's 4 or less.
Sophia, the first thing I need to do is find the place.
Yeah.
First thing I need to
Find
do.
the place.
So what is the place I'm rounding to, the nearest 10?
The nearest 10 is 10.
I'm rounding to right here. This is the place I'm rounding to. I got to go next door. If it's 5 or bigger, I add 1 more. If it's 4 or less, I let it rest. 14 rounds to what?
10.
It rounds to 10. Does everyone see that? You find the place. You go next door. If it's 5 or bigger, you add 1 more. If it's 4 or less, let it rest. Okay? Let's do another one. So let's say I'm going to give you, here we go. One of you is not muted. You all need to have your mics on, please. Thank you. Here's my number, 26. What's my first step? What's my first step? I'm seeing Ellie. Super confident hand. Ellie, what is my first step?
Look at the place.
I look at the place. So here we go. This is where I'm rounding, right here. Then, what am I supposed to do? What's step number 2? Then what do I do? I go next door, right? If it's 5 or bigger, I add 1 more. If it's 4 or less, I let it rest. 26 rounded to the nearest 10. What is the solution? Who thinks they know it? Who thinks they know it? Isis, go ahead.
26 is rounded to 30.
It is rounded to 30. Thank you, my friend. You are rounding, make an arrow. You are rounding up because the neighbor is 5 or more. And so if you were to put this on a number line, for example, right? If you were to put it on a number line and you were to put 20 over here and 30 over here, and then you make all the marks for 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, all the way up to 30, and you put 26 on your line, you're gonna see that 26 is closer to 30 than it is to 20, right? Always looking at 5 or more. If it's 5 or more in the place next door, you're going up. You're going up. Let's do another one. So, how many of you are seeing this, getting this? Is it making sense to you? Perfect. Here we go. Let's say, here's my number. 84 is my number right now. What is my first step? What am I supposed to do right now? My first step, a nod, go ahead.
Look at the place.
Looking at the place,
Look
right
at-
here. I'm rounding to the nearest 10. Thank you. Then what do I do? Then what do I do? What am I doing, my friends? What am I doing, my friends? Yes, Sophia.
Then you round to the nearest 10.
I am, but we're doing that in steps. So the next step, Isis, is
Look at the one's place.
look at the one next door. Yep, thank you. If it's 5 or bigger, add 1 more. If it's 4 or less, let it rest. This number rounds to the nearest 10. What is the solution? What is the solution? Odin, go ahead.
80.
It rounds down to 80. Thank you. 4 or less, let it rest. It rounds down to 80. Okay? We're going to be doing a lot of practice on this. So, with that, what I'd like you to do now is I want you to take out page 7. I love this organizer right now. Please take out page 7. Page 7. Okay. Excuse me. I'll wait for just a second for all of you to get ready. Page 7. Perfect, Connor. Oh, beautiful. Look at Connor. He's saying, I'm ready, Miss D, let's go. I am ready. Here we go. Sophia, please get out page 7. I'll come back to your question in a minute, okay? Thank you. Everyone should have page 7. Trisha, do you have page 7? Great. All right. Noah, how you doing over there in Skate? Perfect. Thank you. Now, up at the top, again, text features. Notice these beautiful highlights, big words, big letters. Love it. Because that's where my eyeballs go, right there. And it's saying that we need to prepare for using place value to round numbers. That's what we're doing now. So based on everything we've talked about between our place value, digit, review, and vocabulary, the things that we've talked about just today, you're going to be filling out this organizer. And this is how you're going to do it. You're going to tell me what you know about rounding. You're going to show me what you know. This is the time where it's your turn and you get to do it. And then you get to show me what you know. So could it be that maybe you're writing the definition to a word? Perhaps. Could it be that maybe you're giving me an example? Sure. Could it be that maybe you're drawing me a picture with a number line or using place value blocks? Sure. The whole idea behind this is for you to show me what you know. So what I'm going to do, and you do not have to log off Zoom, please stay on Zoom. Do not log out. Just stay on. And I want you to take maybe, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes. 5 minutes. And I want you to fill this out. 5 minutes, guys. What you may do is you may do not log out. You may turn your videos off to give your eyes a rest. We will come back together at 9:30 with videos on. Okay? So you may turn your videos off. We're going to fill out page 7, and then we're going to come back together. Tell me what you know about rounding. Okay.